Alrighty everybody, welcome back to another faction overview for the Divide Et Impera overhaul mod for Total War Rome 2 with your man, Immersionholic. That's right everybody, we are getting back into our faction overviews. The latest DEI patch for 1.3.3 has now been finally released out of beta, and your man Immersionholic has also got a new PC, so that's another reason why there's a bit of a lack in uploads, FYI everybody. Hopefully though that means I can produce some more high tier quality content for all of you. But anyway, today everyone, we are jumping into checking out the Saba. The Saba received a massive overhaul in the most recent patch, in addition to a bunch of other factions received some changes too. But for today, we'll just start off with the Saba. As usual, timestamps will be in the description covering each different sort of mini section we're going to go over. And what faction would you like to see overviewed next? Comment down below. I'm thinking maybe we revisit the Morians. They have had some big changes since our last faction overview, but you all decide. Comment down below. Please let me know what you'd love to see. Anyway, that's enough of me talking. Let's jump into our faction overview for the Saba. Alrighty everyone, let's start off by looking at the cultural traits that the Saba shares with the Nabateans. The Saba have Arabian trade heritage, which gives you a plus 10% wealth from all commercial buildings. Quite nice, especially considering your resources you have around you. Speaking of which, we also have the exotic goods buff, which gives you plus 50% spice and slave resource production. If you can't tell, you are going to be very much focused on these exotic resources, 100%. However, the actual buffs and debuffs that Saba gets specifically, let's get to those. So first off down here we have Blessed Arabia. This increases agricultural income, and then you also have the spice trade, which increases income in regions with markets. The one debuff you do have though is the rival neighbors, which decreases diplomacy with other Arabian cultures. Essentially, this is to sort of push you more to being into conflict with your Arabian cousins. Anyway everybody, that's it for the cultural overview. Let's go ahead and jump into the campaign, where we begin our campaign overview for the Saba. Okay everyone, here we are on the Grand Campaign map checking out the Saba. As we can see, ladies and gentlemen, we are a one-hitter quitter. Say it all with me everybody, one-hitter quitter. Insane, right? It feels good to say that. It's just been so long since I've done a faction overview, but anyway, we are a one-hitter quitter. You have one city. If you lose that city, that's it, you're done. GG, well played. Your city is Marib. It is located in the province of Arabia Felix, which has two other cities, Udaimon to the south, and then Muscat to the northeast. Now, we've got a few things going on, but let's also talk about your army. You do have your army, which is led by your Malik, which is essentially your leader, your king, whatever you want to call it. He is leading a Sabaean Royal Cavalry unit, which is actually a sort of mid to, I would call it mid, slightly heavy shot cavalry unit. You then have a single chariot unit. Don't worry everyone, I'm going to rant about chariots later, don't you worry. And then an Arabian Axeman unit and a Sabaean archer. That's it. You don't have any other agents, you don't have anything else going on in terms of what you actually own. However, let's jump into diplomacy and your government. So, starting off, your leader is Sama Ali Yanuf. Apparently, his father is dead, as is his two brothers. So you start off at the age of 27. You need to hurry up and start making some kids. You need an heir as soon as possible. So just be aware of that. In addition, you start off as a tribal confederation. Not a bad government type to have. You do have that minus 10 upkeep to cost of armies, which is very good because your armies are costly when you do a lot of cavalry, and that experience rank is really nice. However, the public order penalties due to presence of foreign cultures can really hit you quite hard, especially once you expand into non-Arab locations, right? And then the minus 10 loyalty can be really detrimental depending on the dice roll. Every time you start your campaign, the other parties that you can see here that I'm selecting have randomized traits, essentially. So whether they're going to be loyal or not really just depends on what sort of traits that you get thrown at you. So Tribal Confederation could be really bad or really good. Sort of depends on the dice roll. Over time, Immeasureholic, do you have any recommendations? Centralized Kingdom provides you with quite a few nice buffs, like that 10% tax rate, 5% chance income from trade agreements, which is good because you're going to use a lot of trade. That Empire maintenance does hit you in the late game, but by the late game you're so powerful it should be pretty irrelevant. That plus 5% on key costs for all armies isn't great, but again, your trade and your taxes in particular are going to really pump in a lot of money for you. So I don't think there's any rush to change it. Tribal Confederation on its own is okay. Just again, be aware of that minus 10 loyalty. You don't want to have a civil war. We don't need any fitna. Speaking of which, this is going to be very much akin to a sort of Rashidun Caliphate style campaign. I mention that because this is sort of the approach that I had when I've played as a Saba. And so that's sort of the military will be very similar to that setup, as will the campaign. So just throwing it out there. But anyway, let's shut up and move on. What's our diplomacy looking like? It's pretty bare minimum. As you can see, we don't know much about the world around us. However, we do have the Muscat as our friends. We do already have trade, but that's it. They're willing to give us a little bit more, but they also are in your core province of Arabia Felix, so you might not even want to go ahead and get that non-aggression. The Himyar down here to your south, also in your core province. You typically can get trade with them and non-aggression, but why would you bother when you're going to conquer them within the first 5 to 10 turns? What's that, Immeasureholic? We're doing that? Absolutely we are. You then had the Ma'in up here to the northwest. They are typically quite friendly and usually keep to themselves. The Hagar, very much a coin flip on if they're going to be nice to you or not. Typically they'll get embroiled in taking on these Seleucids to the north. However, in all of my test campaigns, the Hagar and the Muscat do seem to declare war on each other fairly consistently. And this was again on normal campaign difficulty. The one enemy I can almost guarantee you will almost always have isn't the Axum, but it's going to be the Madewi that is next to the Axum. If the Axum somehow managed to beat the Madewi, which they never do, but if they did, they would probably still be hostile to you. It's just something around these nations down here in Ethiopia, they just don't like you. So once the Madewi go ahead and take out the Axum, conquer and consolidate Ethiopia, watch out for those raids coming in across the sea right here. And there is a port city right here, I believe. So that's typically where you can expect them to try and either launch a army across over there or come way down to Eudaimon. So you do have some forewarning of it. And your navy can hold them at bay, as terrible as your navy is. Get to that shortly though. So that's essentially it for your diplomacy. One of the nice things that you have in the sort of mid to late game is deciding who you want to side with in terms of big players. So once you go ahead and unite all of Arabia, you then need to figure out, diplomacy-wise, am I going to befriend the Seleucids or am I going to befriend the Egyptians? We'll talk a little bit more about that. However, I just want to point out right now that there isn't necessarily a sort of pinnacle in terms of direction trying to force you to go a certain way. You do have the option of coin flipping and be like, you know what, this time I'm going to go help out the Egyptians. This time I want to help the Seleucids. Essentially, you don't have any other biases against any other factions besides their own personal traits against you, which is always a coin flip. So essentially, diplomacy is quite straightforward for you. You do have some friendly Arab nations. However, you do want to go ahead and consolidate them relatively quickly. That, and then the Ethiopians hate you. They will declare war, and they will come and try to mess you up. Oh, that, and also, the Nabateans, who are way up here, although they do have a whole province to themselves, they typically take quite a lot of effort to actually be friendly towards you. So I wouldn't be surprised if you do have a war with them at some point, and they do have some, decent military units. They're comparable to you. All of the factions around you that are Arab typically have the same military as you. They also don't have to wait for reforms to get their good units. So just be aware of that. Now, though, let's move on to your economy and then population after that. Economy-wise, as you saw in the traits overview, you have a bunch of buffs tailored towards doing commerce, doing trade. You even have some due to agriculture. So you can go sort of either way. In the short term, I recommend you go commercial focus. So as soon as you were done uniting Arabia, or at least Arabia Felix, go ahead and pump up some commercial buildings. There's a couple reasons for this. First off, your core city has spice in it. Very, very nice resource to have. One of the best in the game. In Muscat, they have silver. Very, very nice to have again. And then down here, you have slaves. As terrible as it is to say, in the game, just saying, in the game, it is good to have this resource. There's not many places where you can actually have the slave as an actual resource. Everyone can get slaves from looting and whatnot, but this actual resource is quite unique. So your core province starts off with some amazing resources and the capacity to actually do really well in terms of commerce. Build up those chains, like your spice chain, your slave chain, etc., and go ahead and go down the commercial trait, whatever you want to call it. Go ahead and do that. It will help you quite substantially early on. In the mid game, though, let's say you want to expand and you go and take the most wealthy province in the entire game, arguably, which is Egypt. You then have agricultural bonuses which come into play on top of everything in Egypt. Egypt is just an insane province. That's an entirely other video, but just an FYI, agriculture is going to be nice for you in certain locations. Obviously, in your core province, 3 cities, you're in the middle of Arabia, it's not going to be fantastic to go with agriculture. However, there is one caveat to consider. You do actually have one of the very few wonders in the game that you can actually upgrade and mess around with a little bit. So you have the Great Dam of Marib. This is going to be very much a double-edged sword. It used to be a lot more powerful, at least I believe it did in its first iteration. However, since then, it has been, I don't want to say nerfed, but balanced is one way of looking at it. So you can see once you get to the level 3 Great Dam of Marib, you start off with Great, you get a Greater, then you get the Grand Dam of Marib. After you've researched the appropriate tech, you can get +8 sanitation to all regions in that province only, though. Minus 1200 wealth for maintenance. That's massive. That's a really big drawback. However, this does give you +4 growth per turn in all of your provinces, so that's really big. And then the next big thing, though, is +12 wealth from agriculture in all of your regions. So, agriculture can get a boost in Arabia Felix, and then you can get growth in literally all of your provinces that you control directly. So there is some nice stuff that comes with it. However, it's not as powerful as, say, the wonders that Egypt has. But it is worth pointing out that you do have a wonder here. Oh, and of course also your city is a walled settlement, just in case you didn't realize as well. So that is your economy. As you expand out and get into the actual Mediterranean Sea, you'll also be able to get trade with literally anybody. Based on your resources, a lot of people are going to want to trade with you. The only issues I had economically in terms of trade was the Mauryans, Indians. They have no interest in trading with you because they have everything. They have fish, they have spices, they, I believe, even have a slave resource somewhere over there, potentially. Either way, just the entire east of Persia has so many different resources, they don't care. But you don't need them. You're all good. So, one slight additional thing to consider for your economy is doing raids. So again, I mentioned the Rashid and sort of Caliphate style of warfare because raiding was a large part of that. So your armies do not take any attrition from the desert itself. They can take attrition when there's a harsh summer. So if you come down here, you can see right now it's winter. We do have a minus 10% campaign map debuff, but that's it. Some summers do have a chance of causing attrition just entirely province-wide. Doesn't matter who or what you are. If you're in that province during that summer where it's blistering hot, you're going to suffer attrition. However, I can move this army wherever I like, and it's not going to get attrition in the desert. Excuse that background noise, everyone. Little Mia, our lovely cat, is getting involved in our review today. Anyway, you can see as I hover over this, it does say armies will suffer losses due to attrition when in desert regions. However, this is just a generic sort of message, a generic warning to you. The Saba do not have to deal with this, which is pretty awesome. So you can move your armies around just as much as you like. So how does this actually relate to your economy? As I said, raiding. So once you unify some of these other regions, go ahead and maybe do some raiding against the Seleucids. They have their core province right here. Go ahead and just have one of your armies come into the desert, raid for a few turns. Maybe the Seleucids declare war, maybe they don't, who knows? But then disappear into the desert. The Seleucids can't chase you. So it's one of the most infuriating things about what the Rashidun Caliphate did during its initial inception. So that can give you a slight boost to your economy, and it will develop over time as your general for that particular raid-based army gets more buffs. Again, something to keep in mind, especially in a head-to-head campaign. Now, population. What is going on with population? Well, initially, your city starts off with 15,000 people. Not a massive amount, right? And this is 15,000 fighting men, I should say, which isn't fantastic. However, you can see across all of my different social classes, nobles, warriors, commoners, foreigners, we have massive growth occurring. And that's pretty consistent. In my campaigns, my core city of Marib boomed up to around 50 to 60,000 without me really doing too much to help it. It should grow naturally on its own. Not only that, but nearby you have Eudaimon and the Muscat that also receive pretty substantial growth, and they are entirely Arab. So when we click on your city right here, we look at the cultural details of your province. It is listed as desert nomadic, essentially Arab, right? Ancient, at least. Pre-Islam Arab, to say the least, as well. Obviously, this is 278 BC. But your entire province is of the desert nomadic culture. Up to your north, you also had the same thing going on there. And then there's even a little bit mixed in Seleucia, I believe. And then up here in the province of Syria, where you have like Palmyra, etc. And then there is some over here as well, I believe, in Palestine and potentially in Egypt. Essentially, you do have quite a large sort of core base of population just in Arabia alone, just in this area. And then not only that, but you then have modern day Jordan right here, which has around 3 cities in it, which are under Nabatean control, which means again they're going to be desert nomadic. So once you unify all of Arabia, you're going to be pumping out Arab-based armies very easily, and it's not going to affect your population too much. The only issue is that you need to march them all the way up to wherever you're going. So in the late game, once you say invading Anatolia, or maybe you're going like west into North Africa, although that's not too bad because you have other desert nomads out there as well. But let's just say you're going along the coastline, taking on Carthage and Rome, then it's going to be an issue. If you do naval invasions all the way over into Greece, obviously it's going to be an issue, right? Makes sense, as it should be. But throughout the majority of your campaign, population will be a non-issue, unless you do something very strange. For example, if you go ahead and do an amphibious assault into Persia, not really a massive amount of desert nomadic culture out there. It's more Persian. And then you even have the Indian culture expanding and some Hellenic stuff going on too. So a bit of more of a hodgepodge. Melting pot, so to speak. Okay, so what sort of late game obstacles or even mid to early obstacles is the Saba dealing with? Well, as I mentioned, we have the Ethiopians. They hate you. I don't know why. They just often do. They will literally try to launch amphibious assaults from their coastal province. Or coastal city, I should say. In addition to that, you obviously have the Seleucids and Egypt. Seleucids who are way up here, and then Egypt who... Oh, goodness gracious, what was that? And then Egypt who is over here. So as you can see on my mini-map, with the Seleucids again being right here, you have 2 major Hellenic factions who are in fairly different directions towards in regards to each other. So there's a bit of a coin flip on what you want to do. Do you want to go ahead and take Egypt? Typically, yes. Egypt has one of the best economic-based provinces in the game. It's also strategically very easy to defend once you unite it. And then not only that, but then it is the gateway into West Africa, or maybe going north up through Palestine into Syria, etc., Lebanon, going up and taking those very wealthy cities, which then allows you to go into modern-day Turkey, if you like. So Egypt comes along with a whole swath of different things occurring. One of the biggest attractions as well is Alexandria itself right here. Actually is a coastal city, right? So that means that you will now get trade with all of these Mediterranean powers. You can even launch amphibious assaults if you like. Go ahead, take out Greece and whatever you like to do. But the thing is, the Egyptians typically will do better than the Seleucids in the campaign. Especially if you're just playing on normal difficulty, their armies, and there are many of them, will just sit around their core province. They will sometimes send an army out here, it gets defeated or it takes something, and then that's it. But the Egyptian AI doesn't really do all that much. For example, in one of my campaigns, I went at least 50 turns in, they never even took over Cyrenaica. So, you know, just to throw it out there, they're not very aggressive when you play on normal. Which, again, this campaign overview is based on you playing on normal. In addition, you have 2 wonders at least in Egypt. You have the Lighthouse of Alexandria, then you have the Pyramids of Giza, and then I forget where it is exactly. Somewhere out here to the west, you have another wonder from that town where there's like a temple which does something. Again, I can't remember exactly. But Egypt itself also has resources. Basically, it's an amazing province. It really, really is. However, the Seleucids are an easier target in my opinion. They are over here, as I said. You have Seleucia approximately around here. You then have a coastal city right here, and then their province stretches all the way up here. Somewhere around here we have Edessa, and then I believe there's like one other city. So there is 4 cities in its province. Seleucids are typically busy fighting a dozen plus people. And especially if you can wait until the Seleucid rebellion happens. It's not as OP as it used to be against the Seleucids, by the way. At least for the AI. The AI, they'll usually have 1 or 2 factions rebel instead of all of their satrapies. But it's still enough to force them to do other things. So the Seleucids, they're marching north, they're marching west, they're marching east. Meanwhile, you come in and smash them from the south. Again, very Rashidan-esque sort of situation going on, right? Anyway. The province itself is decent. It does have those 4 cities like I mentioned, and Seleucia itself is an excellent city. It even has the Babylon wonder right there. If you want to see the wonders, by the way, you can just come here and see that there's a wonder right there. And Egypt, we can see Lighthouse of Alexandria, the pyramids, and then that temple of something I forgot. I'm sure someone in the comments, please go ahead and remind me. So you do have options, and these are going to be essentially your 2 main mid-game arch nemesis. Do you want to take on the Egyptians with all of their wealth, all of their grandeur? They're massive armies, however, not as elite as the Seleucids. The Seleucids, they're veterans. They don't have the economic power that the Egyptians do, however, they still do have substantial economic power, which you can take. However, their armies are absolutely better than the Egyptians. Typically going to be more experienced and stuff too. Anyway, what about after those? Well, once you beat those major factions, you're basically going to win the campaign, almost guaranteed at that point. You do have some potential juggernaut factions out here in the east. It's really a bit of a dice roll. Parthia, Bactria, Moria down here. That and then Parthava actually typically does quite well. But all of these guys are at each other's throats. By the time you reach them, again, you'll be able to wipe them out. To the north, Armenia can be a bit of a pain, as well as the Kartli, especially if they ally, and they will send stacks down against you, especially if they ally with Media. Getting flashbacks to my own Parthian campaign. I'm sure many of you remember that. But anyway, it's something to be aware of. As for Rome, this is one of the few campaigns where you'll have almost no contact with them. At most, you'll get traded on aggression once you take Alexandria, that's it. They'll be more than happy to get trade with you because of all of your resources. The Romans are all about that. They have no interest in sending their legions to you yet, at least not for a few hundred years. In the meantime, they're busy. So that is essentially it. Couple recommendations to keep in mind before we wrap this section up, everyone. I do recommend you try to solidify all of Arabia. It will take quite a while to do this. Your armies are fairly equal to your other Arab neighbors. However, you're better than the AI, right? It's pretty hard to be worse than the AI. I know there'll be 1 or 2 people comment and be like, Emerger, bro, I'm brand new to DEI, I'm struggling. That's okay, you still will be better than the AI, I guarantee you. It just is how it is. It's just Total War in general. It's quite easy to beat AI armies if you understand like your own units. Especially for the Saba, you do have some pretty major things that can help you out. So one of those things that can help you out is mercenary units. In your core province, you have some nice camel units that you can hire as mercs. I'll just show you real quickly. You have camel riders, melee cav, and then skirmishers, and then you also have Arab spearmen, which are amazing, really, really nice. Down here to the south, though, in Ethiopia, you have African elephants. So in my campaigns, what I tested was sending a general down here. I had him recruit an elephant, come back, and then once you take out Muscat over here, send a general over here. Once you land right where my red arrow is, you can recruit Indian war elephants and go ahead and bring them back too. You'll take a little bit of attrition, but it's only a couple turns, doesn't matter. So you get those elephants, and it's going to give you such an easy campaign, especially against the AI. It's really going to do massive wonders for you. Something else, or really 2 more points before we move on. First off, when you do choose to take on Egypt, which I guarantee you probably will, consider betraying them. It's one of the rare sort of cases where I recommend you do this. Typically, you want to be very upfront. You don't want to damage your diplomatic reputation, but by the time you're ready to take on Egypt, you should have Arabia all under your belt. Go ahead, befriend them, and then just plant an army right here, ready to take out Alexandria. Another one like right here, ready to take out the coastal city, which is right there, I believe. Then another one right here, ready to take out Memphis. Basically, have some armies ready, hit them all at once, take out their core province within a single turn, once you have your armies there. That's my recommendation, just to sort of blitzkrieg them a little bit, take Egypt by surprise. It will damage your reputation, but again, by that point, no one cares. Right, you're powerful enough. But it will just save you a lot of heartache and trouble in dealing with the Egyptian pikes, which are scary for you. And then my last major point before we move on is avoid naval battles. They are terrible. Your navy is redonkulously bad, considering you are a coastal maritime power. I don't know how you can be surrounded by the ocean and be so terrible in it, but unfortunately the Saba's navy is just absolutely terrible. You have like 2 different types of ships to choose from besides your general. The highest ship AP you get is 800 ship AP, and that's just for your general. Beyond that, though, all of your other units have 600 HP at the most. Most of them were just 80 men per ship. Your archers can get 100 per ship. I'm mentioning the Navy now, everyone, because I'm talking about them and also your reforms in this section. A little bit different to how I've done it in the past, but I just want to show you your reforms. It's a bit easier, right? As it actually demonstrates that in the technology tree. So if you go to your technology, click on management, you'll see right here, Saba reform upgrades, turn 64. Go ahead and research that whenever you like. You do need to research it before you get the Saba units up. But a measure, it says only 1 unit on the left-hand side. It's not worth it. Please ignore that. You get plenty more units once these reforms do happen. They're basically akin to the Greek-wide I guess Greek worldwide reforms. So at turn 64, you hit your reforms and then you get given some extra nice units. And measure, what sort of units? Glad you asked. Let's go ahead and jump into the military overview section of this video, where we will check out the military of Saba. Alright everybody, here we are on the battle map now, checking out the brand new Saba roster. That's right everyone, straight off the bat you can see the Saba are looking in bloody credible, mate. Fantastic, so much variety, so much colors, but again, so, dare I say, immersive. So here we go, checking them out right now. You can see we don't have a massive military, but it's also not the tiniest one there is. Oh, hang on, we're missing one of our units. What are you doing out here? Oh, you're hiding. Okay, we'll get to you shortly. Anyway, let's go ahead and do our usual. Let's start off with our skirmishers, though.
We are at your command.
Actually, no. Just kidding. We forgot about our general. Let's talk about our general.
Orders, my lord.
So, this is our Sabaean Royal Cavalry unit. Where are you? Right there. I'll have them selected on the unit cards at the bottom. That's group 6 if you want to look at the unit cards, which, by the way, they all look insane. Fantastic. Beautiful stuff. Mad props to the DI team. But yeah, we have this Sabaean Royal Cavalry. Shock-based cavalry unit, 33 armor, massive 13 melee attack. However, the defense is really lacking at 5. Don't let them get stuck in melee, of course, with all of your shock cavalry needs. And again, just looking so awesome. But this is the general unit. You'll have for a large portion of the campaign. By the way, I'll also throw out there right now before anyone freaks out. Yes, I'm well aware. Hope you all are as well. The Saba, as their eastern faction, they have 120 men for every single one of their cavalry units. The only exception to this is when they hire mercenaries that aren't part of their culture or part of their actual military. Okay? But even, for example, the mercenary camels that you can recruit in your core province, they do have 120 men. But right here, your general, Sabaean Royal Cavalry, this is your general as well, what he looks like, looks incredible. Has 120 men in it, but no javelin. So that's something to be wary and aware of.
Melee cavalry at your command.
You then have the late Sabaean Royal Cavalry, though. Oh my gosh, look at this dude. What an absolute Chad. Insane. Look at the detail on all of these units. Absolutely beautiful. Looks quite good with this reshade, if I do say so myself. But anyway, like, look at that. This is absolutely late game Royal Cavalry sort of treatment. Fantastic. Not only do they look amazing, but their stats are fantastic as well. 10 melee attack. Doesn't sound too high, but this is in conjunction with a 15 melee defense. Armor of 45, 120 men in your unit. You are laughing with this incredible melee cavalry based unit. Let them go ahead and grind out against infantry, against enemy cavalry. They will do serious wonders for you. They will do some incredible stuff. Excellent overall. Absolutely bloody fantastic unit to get. Get it as soon as you can.
We will darken the skies.
Anyway, let's move on to our slingers, who have received a visual overhaul. They're not looking amazing, but they are looking quite fitting. Again, I really love the variety in itself. But unfortunately, nothing really special to highlight about them, except they have 175 men with that range of 190. So it's decent, but it is absolutely militia tier. That's it.
We await your orders.
Oh, and it's also your only slinger unit you have, by the way. We then move on to the Arabian Light Infantry. These are your skirmishers, your javelin men. These are your only javelin men as well. Same sort of story as the last unit, 175 men, which is nice, but nothing special to warrant mentioning at all.
Archers!
We then have the Sabaean Archers. Very levy tier militia unit archer, again. However, not only do we have them, but we actually have an upgraded version right here.
We are at your command.
These are known as the Sabaean Irregulars, and they are quite irregular. I know, shocking. But this is another archer unit, which is essentially a direct upgrade to your other Sabaean archers. However, in this case, they actually do have some melee attack potential. Melee attack is at 11, melee defense is at 9, and their armor is at 10. So not only will they act as a relatively decent archer, they do even have a shield on their back, which does protect them, by the way, to an extent. But they can actually, like, charge the rear of an enemy and actually get some kills. They're not going to die immediately, like, for example, Persian archers might in their militia sort of levy unit level. These guys are quite helpful, and they will make up the backbone of your skirmishing capabilities. And that's it. You only have 4 units of skirmishers, unfortunately. That's all. Anyway, let's move on to your spearmen.
Our spears are yours.
Which is going to be group 4 at the bottom of my screen. Again, I'll keep those unit cards up there for you all. But we're starting down.
Archers!
On the left hand side, we have your Sabaean militia. 300 men per unit. No javelins though, so really wouldn't recruit this unless you absolutely have to. You then, though, bounce straight up to the Urban Guard. Now, whether you go to this or another unit we're about to get to is going to sort of depend on your reforms and timetable, basically what sort of buildings you've built. But the Urban Guard are a really excellent mid-tier cav unit for you, despite your men being footless. Oh wow, look at those toes. It looks crunchy. They're actually very well skilled. They have an armor of 20 somewhere under those robes, I guess. Maybe, again, they're just so chatty that their skin just gives them 20 armor. But their melee attack is at 10, defense is at 10, all of their other stats looking quite solid. Total weapon damage 28, bonus to cav of 13. This is going to be excellent in taking on cavalry. In addition, if you are a keen viewer and paying attention, you will notice that on their back, they also have a bow. I believe it's like a composite bow, but they have a bow. Only 5 ammunition, but this is still 5 arrows that you can have every single man rain 200 times 5 gets you to 1,000, by the way. That means that you have 1,000 arrows to throw at the enemy before your men charge in the battle. Why not, right? You're guaranteed to get at least hit point damage against the enemy. Very nice unit to have. However, we then move on to really what is going to form the backbone of at least your early tier units. And this is going to be your Caravan Guard. Very similar sort of unit, however its stats are slightly boosted in certain areas. For example, melee defense is actually way up to 16. And then you also have an armor of 25, which is quite substantial. Same situation in terms of your arrows and your bows. You even have that shield on your back again. Oh my gosh, look at that. Look, it's sick. Bonus versus cavalry of 17. Weapon damage slightly lower at just 26. But these are going to form the core of your basically spear line defenses again. Incredible looking officer. Looking insane. However, something to be aware of with the Caravan Guard, everybody, is that you need to recruit a specific dock in order to get it. You don't get it from your typical military building chain. They're Caravan Guards. They're used to doing guards for people that are doing trade. Where do you do trade? In your harbor. So just make sure that you're building the correct building in order to get these guys, okay? You do not have to wait for the reforms to get them. So this is why you will probably use these first before any other sort of decent spear that you get access to. However, you can see we have more spears. Woo!
Spears ready!
Next up, we have your Sabaean nobles. This is a potential general if you want to use it as one. However, what else is it? It's basically a mid/heavy-ish spear unit. It's this type of unit where you're just going to spam it in the late game as a baseline unit to form up the backbone of your army. But before then, you're not really going to use it too much. Maybe as like a governor unit, it could be quite nice to help you defend a city. Because it's essentially just like the Caravan Guard and the Urban Guard, except this time, their stats are even better. Armor of 30, but their attack is only at 8, defense is at 16, total weapon damage 28, bonus versus cavalry of 21. So this could be really nice to give again to your governors who are defending cities. Maybe you have like a governor installed in Seleucia. Chuck him in with a personal bodyguard like this. He'll be able to hold the walls against those Parthians quite well.
Orders, my lord!
Then, though, we get to your most elite. Oh, what is that? Dude, what an incredible unit. Absolutely insane. That I can't get over how badass he looks. He's got big things going on. That head is bigger than my future, everybody. Wow. Incredible stuff the DI teams pulled off here. I really can't get over it. I'm so happy the Saba has been finally overviewed. I mean, reviewed, redone, whatever you want to call it. We are reviewing them now. Again, very similar sort of situation to the last few spear units. However, the one main difference is that they don't have a bow. No skirmishing capability at all, but they don't need it. 20 melee defense straight off the bat. 20! Melee attack of 9, total weapon damage of 30, bonus versus cavalry and elephants of 25, armor of 35 as well. Insane unit to have. Very, very lovely. Veteranized. Send them in at the end. This is essentially your Arab version of sending the Triari, however you want to pronounce it. So, as you can see, all things are considered, you actually have a decent spear complement to your army. You're going to be using spears either as a flanking force to help with your cavalry, or you can use them to sort of provide a backbone to your army. It's up to you, whichever you prefer.
Orders, my lord!
Time for your melee troops, or your swordsmen. So straight off the bat, we have your Red Sea Light Infantry. As you can see, they do like to hide quite easily. 300 men in the unit. They do have 3 javelins to throw at the enemy, so that can make them nice. 900 javelins getting thrown is quite substantial. However, the rest of their statistics are absolutely disgusting. The only good redeeming quality they have is that they have an armor piercing damage of 12. But, I mean, they have a melee attack of 5, so they're not really going to kill anything ever. They have no armor, so they melt against anything, especially javelins and skirmish fire coming their way. I really recommend you only ever get these to throw at the enemy and expect them to do nothing except throw their javelins, and that's it. But even then, you're wasting 300 people in your population. It's quite a lot. So, in general, I don't recommend you use those. What I do recommend though is jumping over here to the Arabian Axeman. Still a fairly low tier unit, but this is where it's getting a little bit more serious, a little bit more actual practical. So melee attack 7, defense at 9, neither of these is too incredible. However, these are Axemen, so that means their armor piercing damage is quite solid at 13, plus their regular weapon damage of 18 on its own as well. So straight off the bat, you're getting into the 30s of weapon damage, which is fantastic. Armor is at 15, doesn't sound like a lot, but in the early game for you, that's actually quite decent. All of their other stats, bonus versus elephants is worth noting, even slight bonus against infantry, nothing against cavalry though. 1 javelin to throw at the enemy as well.
We are at your command.
After the Greek reforms, you then also get the Sabaean Axeman unit right here. These guys are essentially just a slight upgrade compared to that last unit in every sense of the word. Weapon damage increasing slightly, so this is going to get you to 33 weapon damage in total. Defense of 11, attack of 9, armor 20. Just recruit them when you can. Why wouldn't you? Fantastic unit, and again, oh my gosh, I can't get over these units. They look insane. Oh, dude. You are looking just like deadly, bro. Like, I don't want to mess with you at all. He's just looking up at the sky. Oh, wait, no, never mind. Now he's staring into our soul. Anyway, let's move on.
At the ready.
To really your absolute gem. The diamond in the rough is your Sabaean champions. Remember earlier how I mentioned the Rashidun Caliphate? One of the hallmarks of the Caliphate's warfare was sending in the champions that they had. Before a battle would begin, they would send in their champions to fight the Romans, Persians, whoever it was, in a one-on-one in front of the entire army. This is your equivalent, just again, several hundred years earlier. But I just like to think of it because it's such a similar sort of relation, I guess. Similar sort of setup. These guys are disgusting with their stats. A melee attack of 17 just straight off the bat. Melee defense of 10. They even have a decent little charge bonus of 22. So overall weapon damage of 34 and an armor of 35, base morale of 56. These guys are disgusting. They are terrifying. Absolute juggernauts. Now, you're not going to build an entire army of these lads out of like your money and whatnot, because they can be a bit costly. However, once you get to the mid-late game, you'll be using a lot of them. You'll be using 6 to 8 of them. These are your Principes on steroids. These are your bear warriors that the Iberians get. The only issue with them, really, in my opinion, is that they lack that armor-piercing damage. So, you have them charge into the rear of a elite Seleucid unit. That's awesome, but the Seleucids are renowned for their armor. So, it's good. They will win, but it's going to take them time, right? That, and they don't have a javelin. But they are fantastic. One of your few units that has the disciplined buff as well. But that is it for your infantry. As you can see, kind of balanced in terms of you have some good swords, you have some good swords over here, sorry, and you have good spears, bare bones skirmishes though. However, you can see up here in the rear, we have quite a large selection of cavalry. Again, going along with that Rashidun style of warfare.
Arabian cavalry.
You have Arabian cavalry, or Arabian light cavalry. 120 men per unit, as always, speed of 8, so very, very fast. However, all of their other stats are pretty terrible, except they do have an armor piercing damage of 12. So total weapon damage of 30 for a unit that you can recruit pretty much turn 1 is not bad. These guys will also be very good for raiding, doing some scouting for you as well, especially on a battle map like this, right, where you have a mountain in the middle. You need someone to scout, send them in.
At the ready.
You then have a single Arabian horse archer unit. Pretty much the exact same sort of story with them, except their armor piercing damage is not really there, so they're not there to do much melee stuff. Although their actual weapon damage that's typical is just at 30 plus 3. So they do actually have solid weapon damage of 33. Holy crap, I didn't realize that. But their defense is at 4, armor is only at 13. So they're not going to do well. They're not going to do amazing in melee combat whatsoever, but they can be used for it if you like. If they run out of ammo and you need it.
Camel archers.
You then have camel archers. So this is our last horse skirmisher of any sort. Very similar to your horse archers. However, weapon damage overall is slightly lower, and your range and missile damage is slightly lower. So pretty much all of your stats are slightly lower across the entire board. The one thing that you have though is your camel. Look at his big smile, cheeky little bugger. Camels terrify the crap out of horses, at least horses that aren't trained to handle it. So that's why you have camels. Now though, we move on to your melee cavalry, which you can see is absolutely the pinnacle of your army in terms of a basis of what is your army going to be composed of. You're going to use some nice spears, some nice swords, and then melee cavalry.
Camel spearmen.
You do have camel spearmen cavalry, but again, armor is so low. You can charge these guys in. They even have an ammunition of 3, so they have some javelins to throw at the enemy. But you let them get stuck in combat, they will die quite easily. You can see half of them are bloody half naked, so that is what it is. However, your Sabaean cavalry, an absolute treat to having your army, going to form the core of your cavalry contingents for much of the early mid-campaign. These guys are melee cavalry. Statistics aren't amazing. However, they do have 120 men in their unit, and they do have 2 ammunition, so they have a couple javelins to throw at the enemy. Overall weapon damage gets you to 30, melee attack of 8, defense of 5. So they do need help in increasing those attack and defense stats, but it's just such an excellent unit to again use as a skirmisher, not a skirmisher, a scout, sorry. And then you can also use it for melee combat purposes. They will tie up enemy skirmishers and do quite well. They will die eventually, but melee cavalry is always nice to have for that sort of core. But
Arabian cavalry.
after you hit those reforms again, you're going to get the late Sabaean cavalry. This is essentially the same as the Sabaean cavalry, except the statistics are everything that you want for a melee cav unit. Just increased slightly compared to the last cav unit we checked out. Melee attack is still kind of low at 8, but the defense is all the way up at 11. Charge bonus of 47. Total weapon damage of 31. Armor 23, speed of 7, 2 javelins throughout the enemy still.
We are at your command.
Sabaean Noble Cavalry. Fantastic unit to have here. Is this the exact same as your general? No, this is slightly different. This is going to be a shock cavalry unit for you. Very similar to your general shock cav unit, but your stats are just slightly lower across the entire board. And this time you have no javelin. But they do have their uses. You need a shock cavalry unit to recharge them Egyptian pikes. Go ahead, use them.
Heavy horse at your command.
However, we then have the late Sabaean Noble Cavalry. This is going to be different to your general in a bunch of different ways. First off, those visuals, oh my gosh, insane. But not only that, but your statistics are actually increased in some areas. For example, melee attack of 10, but your defense is at 17. Total weapon damage of 32. Then you have that armor of 41, base morale of 48. Speed is only at 6, so it's not super high, but these guys are still incredible. The absolute pinnacle of cavalry that you can offer is these guys right here. Frosan al-Nabal. However, unfortunately, we do have one more unit to talk about. You all know, at least viewers of the channel, know how much I absolutely love and adore chariots. Just kidding, you know, I do nothing but talk crap about them, but Saba does have a single chariot unit.
At the ready.
You have your Sabaean chariots. That's right, you only have the one unit. You don't even have a scythe chariot. It's just a chariot, that's it. It's only 1 man per chariot. They can still do some skirmishing and whatnot, but it's not as good, essentially. As like other chariot units, I mean. Their statistics overall don't look too terrible, right? We're looking at it, we've got a range of 170, melee attack 12, defense 10, total weapon damage of getting into 46. But this is a chariot, so we can't play into those statistics too much. Not only that, but you're a chariot. That means that you are very vulnerable due to your massive hitbox. If you lose your horses, your chariot is done. That's what's going to happen in this case as well, unfortunately.
Into formation. Organize yourselves.
Can we do Cantabrian circles? Seriously? I never even noticed that for chariots. But anyway, your chariots, they just die so easily. You get a volley of javelins thrown at them, you lose like a quarter of them instantly. The rest of them taking hit point damage that's quite severe. They can get you some serious kills. However, Emergaholic, how do they get you kills? Recharge them into light infantry, that's it. Don't charge from the front, don't charge from the side even, just charge from the rear. And when I mean light infantry, I mean the equivalent of recharging your Red Sea light infantry. The units that have no armor. If you go ahead and charge a unit that's more sort of mid-tier, like the Sabaean Axemen that have 20 armor, you're going to get bogged down, you're going to die. So they do have their uses. And yes, I've seen those screenshots. I've done it myself where you can get a chariot to get 1,000 kills, which sounds all well and good and amazing, but it is expensive. It is also a pain in the butt to actually recruit early on. You can get far more efficiency out of just getting some good low mid-tier cavalry, melee cav, in my opinion. Absolutely still has its use if you want to, but you don't have to use it. Your melee cav, you do have to use. Your axemen, etc., you do have to use. Your chariots, it's just sort of a fun, sort of novelty thing to use, in my opinion. It's still not worth investing all of your money, in addition to your tier 1 social class it comes from. I believe it comes from that. Into this. One thing it really does excel at, though, is also running down the enemy. So you might even want to keep it in reserve very late into a battle, and then have it run down the enemy that's routing off the field, which can be very helpful for you. But anyway, everybody, that is it for the Saba military. Overall, you can see that you are very much focused on fast-moving cavalry, melee-based cavalry, and then also undisciplined but fast-moving infantry overall. You do have some excellent elite units, some elite spears, some elite swords that will do wonders for you, but you gotta wait till you can recruit them. You gotta wait until you have the money to fill your armies with them. And even then, your Sabaean champions are still gonna lose the pikes in a head-on collision. So how are you gonna deal with those pikes? A few different ways you can. I've talked about a bunch of them, but anyway, everybody, that is it for the Saba military section. Now let's go into the verdict of the Saba, and then from there, we'll end it. Alrighty, everyone, welcome to the verdict of our Saba overview. It's time to do some final points for you all to keep in mind, and then after that, I'm going to give a difficulty rating of my opinion on a Saba campaign. First off, one of the nicest things you have about your very isolated position is you have a very defendable homeland. You go ahead and attack the Seleucids, you get your butt kicked, guess what? No need to panic. The Seleucids have a very long march to get to your capital, and even then they're going to be taking attrition almost the entire way. You can also ambush them on the way by hitting them from the desert where they cannot march into. So, your homeland is very amazing. We're talking Napoleon trying to take Moscow in a Russian winter, sort of amazing. In addition to that, though, your isolation means that you can build tall if you like. Get your economy going quite well before you actually begin your conquest. Essentially, time your conquest for when you are ready. The only thing that you're going to be rushed on, typically, in my campaigns at least, from what I tested, was the Ethiopians coming for you. But you can also sort of abuse the fact that they're going to be launching their navies at you. Their armies will also be coming in transport ships, which you can take out insanely easy. So taking on the Ethiopians, again, time that to your advantage and hit them when you're ready to. Don't go ahead and just engage them in a frontal engagement. They do have axemen and javelinmen that will shred your lightly armed units. So you do need to be wary, but for the most part, you can time your invasions. You can hit Egypt or the Seleucids whenever you're ready. Which leads me to sort of another reiteration of that section, is that because you are so far out of the way, you don't really have an arch nemesis faction to take on. You don't have to fight the Egyptians. You don't have to fight the Seleucids. You do if you want to hit your victory conditions, but no one cares about that nowadays, right? We care about just immersion and having fun. But some other factions, for example Carthage, they have to fight Rome, right? After that, they're going to be fighting some other big factions as well. For you, you literally have no one that's guaranteed to be your epic endgame rifle. Seleucids and the Egyptians typically will be, or at least one of them, but you don't have to if you don't want to. You can influence diplomacy to befriend one of them, befriend both of them even if you can. It's up to you. And then if you are really struggling with your campaign, one of the things I do like to let everyone know is that, hey, you have a lot of cavalry. You can make entirely horse archer based cavalry armies if you like. Essentially, you can go ahead and completely copy the Parthian style of warfare because you have the light horse archers to do it. You even have shock cavalry that you can use in a sort of cataphract-esque style of charging to go ahead and charge down the enemy once you've softened them up with thousands of arrows that have rained down on them. Or you could just raid the enemy, again hit them with your horse archers, retreat, they'll chase you, you hit them again, and then you charge them down to death. Essentially, you can make the most powerful army in the game if you like, which is a horse archer based army. It's insane, it's almost undefeatable, especially against AI. So keeping in mind all of these points and everything else mentioned so far throughout this entire overview, I need to give a difficulty rating, and ladies and gentlemen, drum roll please. In my opinion, this is going to be a 6 out of 10. This is just an above average difficulty rating for the Saba campaign. Could very easily be an easy campaign, floating more around a 3. Could be average as well, floating around a 5. However, I've gone with 6 out of 10 because this is not your typical faction. This is not what many of you will be used to playing as. So you're not going to be building up your epic wall of pikes or hoplites or Roman principes and sending your armies out and just painting the map. It's not so straightforward. It can be, it can get there, but you need to be aware of your weaknesses and aware of your strengths. So if you can adjust that style of gameplay, and you can do it quite easily, you're going to have an easy campaign with this overall. However, you do also have some risky things. For example, all the other Arab factions have the same units that you do for the most part, and they have it before you even hit your reforms. You're going to be facing some armies that will be comparable to yours when it comes to the other Arabs. Not only that, but then outside of that, the Hellenic factions, pretty much everyone else does have armies that are better than yours, quality-wise, tit for tat, pound for pound. So that's just something else to keep in mind. There will be some difficulties that come along with this. However, in my opinion, this is just still floating around 6 out of 10. This is not going to be a hard or very hard campaign. It is if you're playing on very hard or hard campaign difficulty, which again is what you should expect, right? But these campaign overviews are based on you utilizing normal campaign difficulty and either normal or hard battle settings. Anyway, everybody, I really hope you enjoyed seeing the Saba and their amazing new units. I absolutely have been and been playing my own sort of campaigns. I'll hope to show you all some content on the Saba soon. But anyway, just as a little reminder, whatever faction you would like to see overview next for DEI, please comment down below and let me know. Again, I'm thinking more Moria, but I'd love to hear some of your feedback. Anyway, everybody, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I shall see you in the next one.